In the eye of the storm, you'll find cinema recap. Let's take a peek at Geostorm, guys, a movie about Mother Nature's revenge.
Dear God.
Grab those raincoats, and as always, spoilers ahead. Starting it off, we're already getting several glimpses of the world kind of falling apart due to global warming and bad weather patterns and cycles. Millions paid the price in 2019 because Mother Nature just went crazy, started destroying entire cities, including America's most beloved Lower Manhattan, fated to be swallowed whole by the East River. Then on the other side of the globe, a heat wave in Spain ended 2 million people in just one day. Soon the governments decided to just stop messing around like they always do and come together to fight this chaotic global crisis. Together, the governments of the world assembled their top brains for this situation, and they all banded together to make something truly extraordinary, a weather controlling machine.
They found a way to neutralize the storms.
Specifically, a bunch of satellites that can alter the weather thanks to the control of heat, pressure, and water. They called the satellite system Dutch Boy, in reference to the child who stopped a dam breach by using his finger. Safe to say that humanity prevailed with their new innovation. So let's all head over to Washington, D.C. to greet today's main squeeze, the man behind Dutch Boy, Jake Lawson. He's visiting the building for a Senate hearing. Then apparently he gets a warm greeting from the guards thanks to his effort in saving humanity. The guard says everybody owes him, so he's asking for the man's tie. The Senate hearing is about to begin, and well, that's an understatement because Jake is almost 1 hour late. He's late thanks to his flight. The senator, like the scummy politician he is, claims that Dutch Boy should be more controlled by American hands, despite the fact that it was an international effort. And despite his best efforts, the Senate urges him to follow their authority. But Jake makes it clear that most of the impulsive decisions he made saved countless lives. The Senate isn't convinced, and they're demanding to send their own people to the Dutch Boy space station.
My crew didn't do anything wrong.
But the crew there already sacrificed mostly everything just to be there to help. Jake's defending them with an iron fist, stating that the Senate is just trying to take credit for what the rest of the world did. Ah yes, more political garbage. The Senate cowers in fear and adjourns the meeting, despite Jake still standing strong to prove his point. After the meeting, Jake meets with his brother Max Lawson, who says that the meeting totally didn't go well, in contrast to what Jake believes in at least. Max says it's not that simple to fix it, mainly because they suddenly put Max in charge of Dutch Boy. Jake couldn't believe his eardrums. And to top that icing on that cake, Max fires him from the Dutch Boy team. Sibling bitterness aside, let 3 years fly by and we're in Afghanistan. It's sand as far as the eye can see, except for this convoy of Humvees rolling by. It's a UN convoy and they stop by a trail of salt? No, it's actually snow leading to a cold mountainous town. The soldiers fan out to find a frozen village, filled with the coldest bodies known to man. Let's all jump to the White House now to escape this chilly weather, and Max meets up with Agent Sarah Wilson. He tries to flirt with her, but she's trying to do her job, and Max is just persistent.
Move along, sir.
He's actually called up to a presidential meeting, and Agent Wilson actually flirts back underneath her breath. In the meeting room, the president's briefed on the footage of the frozen wasteland in the middle of blistering heat of Afghanistan. They say it's a malfunction from the Dutch Boy itself, so none of them propose to shut down Dutch Boy in that specific vicinity until it's fixed. Another one's more concerned about the press and politics of this, but Max butts in and says that 300 people just lost their lives, so the main priority should be how to fix Dutch Boy and make sure it never happens again. Max says he doesn't need suits and politics to fix this, but engineers, coders, and builders. You know, actual people that can do something.
You need him up there now.
The US President Andrew Palma says Dutch Boy would be handed over to the international community in 2 weeks, so he doesn't want to tarnish his name, and he wants to keep this secret and send only one of their own. Max agrees, but there's only one person for this job, his brother, Jake.
I'm right about Jake.
Stepping into space, we see a spacecraft returning to the International Space Station that's operating Dutch Boy. Apparently that craft is Afghanistan's satellite, and it's being taken in by the space station, while a replacement is launched to its spot. The commander says they want a full dissection of the satellite's components, so the repair team comes by.
I will take care of this.
But this shady man by the name of Mahmoud secretly retrieves the system's diagnostics results and sneaks it into his own locker. Moments after, a room shuts all the doors behind and in front of him. Then he's jettisoned into space. Going back to Earth at Cocoa Beach, Florida, Max visits a small villa. he's greeted by Hannah Lawson, Jake's daughter and niece. He catches her tinkering with a solar generator, meaning she's egging to be a smart cookie like her father. They hug it out, and sadly, Hannah's parents are separated. Jake comes out to find Max to his unimpressed surprise, so he's still roughly annoyed that his own brother kicked him off his own brainchild of a project.
Hey, look. Take care.
Jake's into car parts for a living now, and he's also seen day drinking thanks to his life falling apart for being kicked off at Dutch Boy. Max breaks the silence by saying that Dutch Boy's been having malfunctions, from Afghanistan's snowstorm to the airlocks being suddenly opened.
Dutch Boy's not my problem anymore.
Max wants him to help, but it's out of his hands, since he was unceremoniously fired from this project. Jake actually says yes, as long as Max isn't in charge of him. Traveling to Hong Kong, the nerd does some of his keyboard wizardry and sees that the Afghan satellite for Dutch Boy has been deployed. He tries to call Max, but he's busy at the moment. The nerd goes shopping a little, but suddenly a smoldering heat wave comes, and then the ground cracks, erupting fire from the creases. The nerd breaks for it, but the streets get more and more chaotic, as if the fire fisher was catching up to him. The fire begins to uproot and decimate buildings upon buildings. The nerd reaches the bridge, but the temperature suddenly drops. He goes out and looks at the city behind him, partly destroyed from all the quakes and ruins. At Jake's house, he and his daughter heard the news of what happened in Hong Kong. Hannah goes on to say that she heard that Jake was going back to Dutch Boy to fix its errors, and she's really worried about him because of Mahmoud's airlock undoing.
Maybe you should listen.
Hannah's ride comes to pick her up, and she only wants her father to come back alive. Then she drops some tears, so Jake consoles her with a hug and reassurance that he is coming back. Let's hop over to Florida at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, where several rockets are being prepped for departure. Jake arrives at one of the shuttles and they have liftoff. It's quite the shaky flight. Then the shuttle reaches space. There, Jake swings at zero gravity, excited to see Dutch Boy's satellite network once again. The shuttle makes its way to the International Space Station where the doors open and it lands smoothly. Jake's quite happy he's back on the saddle again. Then Ute Fassbinder introduces herself to him. She's the German scientist in charge of thermospherics, or rather the temperature of the atmosphere. Jake takes a walk with her and already notices a lot of maintenance has been done since he's left.
But when I left, everything here was perfect.
He wants to rub it in to the chief scientist to take care of his baby, but she's the chief scientist for over a year now. Ute walks him to his team, where he already gets berated for being an American. Can't blame him though. But now Jack wants their names and positions. There's Adisa for structural, Duncan Taylor, the systems and OS analyst with a mouth to boot, Hernandez with robotics, and Dissette with SATCOM and security. They're all surprised to know that he's the legendary Jake Lawson who once led this whole project. And now he says he's here to fix what recently has been happening with the past 3 lethal incidents.
There was a gas main explosion.
Diving back to Earth, we're at Max's place, and he's spending some time with his fiancée, Agent Wilson, who doesn't have to muzzle herself from the flirting because she's off duty. Max says he wants to get married, but Agent Wilson's job comes first. And speaking of jobs, Max's is just ringing up, and at the other line is Cheng Long, the nerd who survived Hong Kong's sewer sun trap. Cheng says the temperature spiked before the explosions happened, so the satellite should have alerted them, but suddenly they lost access from Dutch Boy.
If someone is covering up a system defect,
Someone's trying to cover up the system defects, and Cheng fears it might lead to a global mechanical failure that can result in a devastating weather phenomena known as a geostorm. Suddenly, Agent Wilson's Secret Service duty calls, so she's got to bounce. Going back to Cheng, he's doing some digging when the power warps out. Some guys in suits and MP5K suddenly storm the room, so Cheng hides in a locker. At the space station, Jake talks with the team on what went wrong, like how the satellite in Afghanistan went rogue. Duncan says the logs of the satellite were wiped clean when the malfunction happened, so Jake wants every satellite of the same kind to be scanned for malfunction logs.
Pull up every rock and roll in the net.
Somewhere in the capital, Max pays his subordinate Dana and asks her for a favor, to have his holoframe phone fixed. It's not just any error, because Max leads on that there's something fishy going on behind the scenes. Dana takes a look at this phone. Then they find out someone's trying to lock Max out of the system. Dana makes it clear that she won't say a word to anybody, but she does want in on the action. Sadly, there isn't any action yet, Dana. Let's head back to space, and Ute and Jake are asked to meet up with the Yahoos from Washington. It's Leonard Deckham, the U.S. Secretary of State and Max's boss. He just wants to say that there's a lot at stake here, and Jake makes sure that if anything comes up, he'll report it. Leonard says that he needs to report it to Max, and that's already such a big red flag. That everyone else gives the two some time to talk alone to each other. Of course, Jake already doesn't like reporting to his younger brother, and that he lied about who's in charge. Then Max says that there's something really sus about how the satellites are being rigged. The brothers agree on that, and proceed to have a heated argument about their sibling authority. Max puts his foot down and says if Jake authorizes anything without his approval, he's going to be kicked off again.
Transmission ended.
At the landing bay of the space station, they're about to pull apart and examine the Hong Kong satellite, but the mechanical arm holding the satellite goes haywire. It almost crushes a few people. Then the satellite gets destroyed. Jake's still going to examine its remains, so he brings the team over to have a look at it in the repair bay, but Duncan says the drives could be fried by now, just as the trail might have went cold. Doucette says there's another drive. It's from one of the panels that opened during Mahmoud's celestial undoing, and now it's stuck somewhere outside of the space station. Jake then orders for the retrieval of that panel. Heading back to Earth, Max gets a call from Chang that he just arrived in DC, and he wants to meet up with him, saying he claims he's got it all figured out.
All right, yeah. I'll be there.
Sometime later in space, Jake and Ute are in their astronaut suits, and they head outside to retrieve that panel. They easily float to it and softly free it from the bars. They float back, but Jake's suit suddenly goes crazy.
What's going on? What's going on?
His suit's malfunctioning.
It drags him everywhere until he loses hold of that panel. Then Ute orders to eject that pack. His space joyride stops, and now he's just gonna float aimlessly in space. Thankfully, he grabs hold of the edge, and the two make it back to the station. He tells Ute about how he quickly grabbed the drive before he lost the panel. Then he hides it when the rest of the team arrives. The rest of the team says he smashed a few comms equipment and that he confirms he lost the door and the drive. Ute's wondering why Jake lied, to which he responds that someone deliberately made an attempt on his life. They get to a laptop, and Ute finds out that there's no corruption in the drive. Jake still believes that someone assassinated Mahmoud, and it's probably the same person responsible for Hong Kong. Ute says everything in the drive is wiped.
If they're deleted in one place, they're deleted everywhere.
But Jake says when they built Dutch Boy, they built a secret recorder that logs everything. Sadly, Jake's locked out of that system too, so he's going to try another route. Going back to Max's situation, he sees Chang from the other side of the road, but he gets pushed into the road and a car runs him over. Max rushes to his aid. Then Wilson calls an ambulance and tries to chase the culprit's car, so she takes out her pistol and doesn't fire. 9mm can reach 3 miles though. Oh well. Chang utters his last words, being Zeus, twice over. At the space station once again, Jake says he called Max just to apologize, but Max tries to walk out because of certain past events. Jake calls him out on it, since it goes against their secret code of brothers. He recalls a cutesy little story about his dad and him fishing together.
Trust me, he said. I get it.
Then he ends the transmission. At the Capitol, Max visits Dana to show the secret code that he and Max came up with when they were kids. When they decoded it, Jake actually said someone in the government is sabotaging it, so trust nobody. Then Max says to look for anything named Project Zeus, but it's locked behind top secret encoding and a login, so they'll have to go to Wilson for Secret Service access. She gets fidgety about it at first, but eventually agrees. Tension in the station's rising, so they need to access the security cameras secretly through the backup server room. They discover that Mahmoud knew something fishy was going on.
Then let's go take a look for ourselves.
So they try to head to his locker. Doucette catches him snooping around and holds him at gunpoint, but Jake's convinced it isn't him because he's still breathing. Doucette then leads him to where Mahmoud's stuff really is, and they got his holo frame. Everything in that little gadget was copied off of the satellite Mahmoud accessed, and guess what? They found a virus down on Earth. Max and the crew actually found out that Project Zeus's means is to create a global geostorm. They come to a conclusion that someone has weaponized Dutch Boy. The two brothers then go through a secure encrypted transmission together, so Max spills out that someone is deliberately doing this to Dutch Boy, making it look like a series of accidents.
I need you to tell me how they control Dutch Boy.
Jake spills that a virus is causing all of it, and the only way to get rid of it is to reboot and shut down Dutch Boy temporarily. Max agrees, but the code to do that is with only one person, the President of the United States. Jake also spills someone locked off a secret backdoor to Dutch Boy's system, and he's thinking the President might be behind all of this, because he's making it look like Dutch Boy is only reliable in American hands. I knew it. On the flight of the President, Max is asking Wilson to steal the Dutch Boy codes from the president. It isn't getting too better at the space station too, as 200 satellites are also malfunctioning and the control room is in shambles. Tokyo satellites are going insane and drive the weather to rain hail. Looks like Kyoger's back in town. Soon the other satellites begin their retaliation. First in Brazil, with its flash freeze, Jake then places his bet and orders the crew to send the replacement satellites to crash into the infected ones. They send a satellite replacement for Brazil, and it crashes the first satellite. That's one problem, but a new one comes up, a geostorm counting down to 1 hour and 30 minutes. At Florida, Max and Wilson are closely watching the president. Then Max sees the news about Brazil, and then he also sees the countdown of the geostorm in his holoframe. Leonard then calls him out and asks what's the real reason why he came along.
Tell me what's wrong.
So he spills about Dutch Boy and the geostorm. He also asks for the secrecy of the president's shutdown codes. But Leonard says the president's biometrics are the codes. Things are going south in the station as well, as someone started its self-destruct sequence. Duncan's nowhere to be seen, so Jake's smelling something's off. He goes fist first into Duncan. Then he shows his true colors with a Glock. For a scientist, he idiotically shoots the airlock, so Jake runs off while the abyss sucks him dry. Traitors are coming out of everywhere, as Leonard is one of them also and tries to assassinate Max. He escapes and tells Wilson everything, so they're left with one option: try to kidnap the president. Wilson then causes a fiasco, then successfully convinces the president to come with her. They meet up with Max and they drive off. At the station, everyone's evacuating to the shuttles, while Dutch Boy goes to town in Mumbai, India. In Orlando, Leonard is ordering the Secret Service to chase the president. Then Max tells him Leonard's plan to take over office. Soon, a lightning storm blows up the stadium sky high. Mother Nature's really extracting her revenge on humanity with these weather conditions, as they're all so destructive around the globe. Shuttles in the station are fleeing left and right, but Jake stays because he needs the codes from his brother to execute Dutch Boy's shutdown. Ute tearfully gives her last instruction, as Jake runs back to the control room. Meanwhile, on Earth, Leonard has triangulated the president's location and fires an RPG at their car.
You thought the president was the only one who could be tracked?
Too bad it was a decoy, and Wilson gets a hold of him. Soon, a fleet of cops arrive to book him. Leonard makes his last plea for the president to play God with him, but the president replies with Max giving it to him straight to the kisser. The world's really going south, as Dubai gets swallowed whole by a giant tsunami. The president and Max get to the control station. Then Max, the president, and Jake get in touch. He fills them in that it was Leonard. The president then uploads the codes, and it's gonna take a hot minute to transfer, while the space station will totally blow up in 8 minutes. So the president expresses his gratitude for Jake's sacrifice.
Wait, what the hell's going on?
Sadly, the codes can't stop the self-destruct sequence, so Jake has one last request: to look after Hannah for him. Jake then runs to the control room, but loses access thanks to the self-destruct. He has to hurry and suit up, because there's a particle cannon being sent to the Kremlin. The door's access is stuck, but suddenly Ute's there to help him out.
I told you I live here.
They reach the controls and begin rebooting the satellites. They make it with seconds to spare, so Jake manually reboots the system. The virus is flushed, and the controls are sent to NASA. Sadly, the station is entering its final phase of fireworks, but Jake sees a way out: one of the replacement satellites. They enter the satellite just in time before the explosion swallows them. Don't fret though, as something is signaling a mayday through the flares. It's Jake and Ute. They get picked up by Hernandez's shuttle and safely fly back to Earth. Soon, Mother Nature calmed down a bit all over the globe. Jake and Ute are welcomed with open arms by Max and the others. 6 months pass, and Max, Hannah, and Jake finally go on an actual fishing trip. That's until they get bored. Hannah closes it off with NASA rebuilding everything from the ground up. Hit those ejector seats, people, cause that's it for Geostorm. Thanks for chilling. What'd y'all think about this calamity of a movie? Go ahead and let us know in the comments with that hashtag cinema recap. This was Geostorm by Warner Brothers Pictures, starring Gerard Butler, Jim Sturgis, and Alexandra Maria Lara. Until that next bad weather prediction, see you later.